Hello everyone, welcome back to another episode of r/slash entitled parents. In today's episode, my wife was the entitled parent and caused our divorce. My girlfriend's entitled mom freaks out over name change. Neighbors opened up a wedding venue and blast music almost every weekend. Before we get started, make sure to subscribe so you will never miss a video. So let's get started. My wife was the entitled parent and caused our divorce. Hi everyone. So I am a first-time Reddit user. I decided to make a Reddit post of my own personal experience with an entitled parent after finding a few entitled parent YouTube videos. The EP in this story was actually my then wife, and it was a factor in what caused us to divorce. So as a starter, my wife, who I will call Emily, was always a bit entitled, as she had grown up with wealthy parents and truly was one of those keep me in a lifestyle to which I have become accustomed types. I accepted that because I knew it was her parents that had made her this way, and that these learned behaviors could be unlearned just by existing in real life. And she truly had a wonderful side. She could be generous and loving, and truly cared about the people she allowed into her life. I think this also played into her entitled parent status though, because she expected others to be as generous as she could be, and was fiercely and blindly protective of our children. Unable to see how they are in the wrong until after the fact when I had explained it to her in great and excruciating detail. All this to say, she had a big disconnect between how she should behave and her expectations of others, versus what is actually appropriate and realistic expectations of strangers. With that picture painted, here's what happened. We were at Tesco's with my youngest daughter, who has mild autism and struggles to understand social situations. You may also know that people with autism have a distorted sense of self and can be very self-centered. My daughter collects Funko Pops and is currently obsessed with Harry Potter. She needed the Luna Lovegood with the lion headdress one, and every time we went into Tesco's, she would run to the toy aisle to see if they had it. We could have ordered it online, but we promised to get her it if it was there. And this hope made it far easier to manage having her end whatever activity she was doing at home and to get her in the car. She struggles with transitions, and these can be hugely stressful for her. So on this occasion, we arrive at Tesco's and she runs right to the aisle. We follow behind at a distance to allow her time to browse without us looking over her shoulder. She's been out of sight for no longer than a minute when we hear her scream. We both ran over in a panic and find my daughter trying to pry the coveted pop out of another young girl's hands. This young girl is in a wheelchair and clearly has severe learning difficulties. I know you will judge my daughter here, but please do keep in mind that she has autism and associated learning disabilities herself. The girl in the wheelchair is trying to hold the pop out of reach, and her mom is standing to the side of her, trying to get between my daughter and hers without touching my daughter. A trying task. My wife stomps over and immediately starts on the mother. "Don't you dare touch my daughter." The mom, with the patience of a saint, looks at my wife and says, "I'm not. I am trying to stop her hurting my daughter." I get a bit annoyed at this, because my daughter has never been violent with anyone, but can see why she would make this assumption given what was happening. My wife did not see this. She instantly started shouting, "How dare you? What do you think she is? Some kind of monster? She would never hurt an *tard person. She just wants the pop. If you would just give it to her, she would leave you alone." She looks at the girl and says, "Give it to her now." The mom instantly steps into my wife's face and very calmly warns my wife that if she calls her daughter that again, she will beat the shit out of her. My wife looks at me for help, but I just look at her. The truth is I was about to intervene on behalf of the mother. I was so full of rage at my wife at this point that she would call a child this, given our own daughter's issues and how upset she, my daughter, had gotten when she had been called this in the past. I knew right then that this woman I had chosen to marry was a vile human being. They argued back and forth for a little while with no real resolution. Meanwhile, I have grabbed and picked up my daughter to stop her trying to get to the young girl with the pop. The argument was pretty mundane, the usual things you'd expect, the mother explaining why she didn't have to give up the toy as her daughter had picked it up first. We later found out there was loads left on the shelf. It wasn't even the only one. And my then wife had the audacity to tell this woman that my daughter needed it because she has autism and her daughter didn't. At this point, I got fed up of listening and did intervene. I cut my wife off and apologized profusely to the mother, and offered to buy her daughter the pop. She not so politely, but also understandably, declined. As she made her way away, my wife began screaming at me about how I should have defended her and how I was out of order for not. I explained to my wife that I would have nothing to say to her until we got to the car. Noticed the remaining Luna Pops and let my daughter choose another. My wife followed me around, trying to engage me in conversation, but I ignored her for the most part and reiterated that I had no intention of speaking to her. I had never been so disgusted by anyone in my life, and the idea that this woman was the mother of my child made me feel sick. I later explained to her why she was wrong, and she began to get it, but the damage had been done. I could not be with someone who would use that word to describe someone who had it even worse than our daughter. We ended up divorcing over something else some weeks later, but in the back of my mind then, and now this was the beginning of the end. I know this didn't have much of a climactic conclusion, but I wanted to share as I think you guys will all find it interesting enough. I'm hugely shocked at the attention this has gotten, and I'm glad that the majority of you fine folks seem to agree with the action I chose to take. However, a couple of quick edits to update everyone. For this asking why she still got the toy, I'll copy and paste a reply I offered someone else who asked earlier. I had to have a think about it before I got her the pop. Had things not escalated the way they did, I would have explained to her why her behavior was wrong, had her apologize, and then explain back to me why her behavior was wrong before I even considered it. However, with the way things had happened, I decided that it would be unfair to not get it for her when it was not her fault that things had escalated and I had been prevented from going through that process with her. It was made abundantly clear, though, that A, this was not a reward, and B, that her behavior was unacceptable. For those asking about custody, we share custody, but that's a whole other story. If you can point me in the direction of a subreddit where a story of someone trying to prevent sharing custody would be appropriate, I'll post there. Or maybe I'll add it here, but not right now, because I'm on my phone right now and wouldn't want to type it all out. Also, Qstar just covered this in a video, which I thought was quite cool, as it was his videos that even let me know this subreddit exists. Never read an entitled parent story from the viewpoint of an ex-husband. Very interesting and really helps to understand what entitled parents really think. Thanks for sharing, Opie. This is the most interesting entitled parent story that I have read because it's not the victim of the EP, it's the husband. I can tell stories from the side of the kid. When I was under 8 years old, I was an EK. After that, I just felt embarrassed of my and my mom's behavior. My daughter has autism and yours doesn't. She's only in a wheelchair. Clearly, my daughter should have it. 1. The fact that your ex-wife had the audacity to compare the value and worth of two different children's disabilities/disorders simply because one seemed less of a struggle is astounding. I'm so sorry you and your daughter had to go through that ordeal. Having someone with that kind of toxic mindset is appalling, and you would think she'd be understanding coming from a mother who is raising and guiding a child who has a disorder herself. I hope you and your daughter are well, and I wish you all the best. As the mom of a nonverbal child in a wheelchair, this hit close to home. While I commend you for stepping in, you should have way earlier. My husband calls me on my shit when I'm out of line, and I him. That one line would have been the absolute, shut it down. I'm so sorry. Point, although I don't think we are entitled, and neither of us would ever do anything like that. While you know what your kid is like, other people don't. My daughter almost died this year when she was, stupidly, left unattended with another special needs child who stabbed her. Kids with special needs do have trouble with impulse control and understanding their actions, so mom was 100% reasonable for being worried about your child hurting hers, not even intentionally. Otherwise, I'm glad you got out of that toxic relationship. Please try to make sure your kids don't inherit mom's entitlement. She expected others to be as generous as she could be. Nah, dude, she wasn't genuinely generous. She's someone who did favors and expected favors in return. She probably kept a tally of all the nice things she did in her head and either expected the specific person to reciprocate or the world in general through karma. My girlfriend's entitled mom freaks out over name change. My girlfriend has a very rocky relationship with her mom. This is due to a variety of reasons, but one of the major ones is that her mom cursed her with a horribly misspelled name. Something like Hazel Marie, mom's last name. It's not those exact names, but the same type of vibe. Two classic, beautiful names ruined by her mother's pathological desire to be unique. Her parents weren't together at the time of her birth, and she ended up with her mom's last name. This has caused so many problems throughout her life since her dad ended up being her primary parent, and she's told me that she's wanted to change it since she started going to school and having to deal with the problems. The only reason she waited until she was an adult is because her mom wouldn't consent to the name change. Anyway, the paperwork recently went through, and my girlfriend is now Hazel Marie Dad's last name. She's over the moon about it, and I'm so happy for her. The only hiccup has been her mom. We expected her to be upset that her baby girl is deviating from her mommy's wishes, but we didn't expect she'd explode like she did. My girlfriend told her mom the news, and she absolutely blew up. She actually stormed over to our apartment. She lives in the same building as us. It sucks, and banged on our door until my girlfriend reluctantly answered. I advised her not to, but she did it anyway because, and I quote, "It's my mom, let me talk to her." Oh well. My girlfriend's mom barged her way into the apartment and began loudly berating my girlfriend for changing her name. She basically said that my girlfriend threw away the beautiful gift I gave you and said, "You're my daughter, I have the right to name you." She wasn't even really upset about her taking her dad's last name, but she was really upset about her changing the spellings of her first and middle name to the normal spellings. My girlfriend tried to explain about all the problems her name had caused her over the years, but her mom wouldn't let her speak and just kept yelling over her. Eventually, I, much taller and stronger than my GF's mom, force Bly kicked her out while calling her AB*TCH and telling her never to come back. My girlfriend and I are now looking at breaking our lease to get away from her. Message from my girlfriend that she wanted me to add, "Please don't give your kids shitty names. No one thinks it's quirky or cute. You look like an idiot and little Mike and Lay probably resents you for it. Do everyone a favor and just spell your kids' names like they're supposed to be. Take it from someone with a shitty name. It sucks ass to deal with. You're naming a human person, not a doll or puppy." I don't think parents realize how difficult is it for the kids to grow up with the weird names we're given. I was named 3 very popular boys' names starting with M and a weird K name, and last name the third. There was no first or second. The day I turned 18, I changed it. I had been saving up just to make sure I had the money, thought I actually had to before a judge. I also cut my parents out of my life and didn't talk to them for almost 20 years before they passed. Congrats on your name change. I also have a weird last name. It's German and nobody can pronounce it, LOL, and it's been a pitta. Nothing like what my GF has been through. I wish people had more forethought when naming kids. I didn't throw away the name you gave me, I just threw away the spelling you gave me. Neighbors opened up a wedding venue and blast music almost every weekend. We're in a very rural location, but it's not empty out here. People live here. As I'm typing this, I can hear the music from the wedding party through my home's walls, can literally feel the bass, and we're nearly a mile away from the venue, and it's 10:30 p.m. I called our non-emergency 911 to report them to get them to turn it down, and the operator was like, "Oh yeah, they have an event there right now. We have a couple of officers attending so they can serve alcohol." I asked her if they were allowed to play their music that loud, and she said she thought so but wasn't sure what the laws were when I pushed it. The owners of the venue are the children of a previous county council member and a well-to-do business owner in our county, so I'm pretty sure they're getting preferential treatment. We are in Indiana. I tried to look up if we have any noise ordinances, and there are none specific to unincorporated areas other than state code, which would require me to perch outside of their property line with a decibel meter to prove they're being too disruptive. If this was a private party like once or twice a year, fine, whatever. But this is nearly every weekend, and they are profiting by selling off my peace and quiet, and I'm getting nothing but irritation and interrupted sleep in return. Any advice? I tried to look up if we have any noise ordinances, and there are none specific to unincorporated areas other than state code, which would require me to perch outside of their property line with a decibel meter to prove they're being too disruptive. It might not be trivial for them to be allowed to hold events like this, an exception to state law. A permit. What does state law say exactly? But it's relatively easy to measure decibels. You can download free apps for your phone. One caveat to this, don't use a phone app for decibel readings. That can easily be challenged. By a decibel meter, they're fairly cheap, $20 to $50, and will hold up better to scrutiny. Also, reach out to your county commissioner and township lawyer. They'll be able to help you pinpoint the relevant nuisance laws. I don't know about where you are, but typically land is zoned as commercial, residential, industrial, or agricultural. Maybe you need to inquire with the county as to what their land is zoned as. If it's anything but commercial, the county may be able to shut them down if they are violating the zoning of the land. Those ordinances are only as good as they are enforced, unfortunately. You can keep making complaints to the non-emergency line. If you made it to the end of the video, thanks for watching. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and share, and we will see you in the next video.